that's had similar experiences, because Tommy and Janet are the only two people that started this with me in 2012, but they both had out of body. So I'm really looking forward. There's been professionals wanting me to do more, but I haven't had the time because of death and dying in my family. So this is exciting, Jenny. I know we're brought together, but I know what you're talking about, the people, because to me, you're out of body and you're talking. You feel like you're talking with your voice, but it's really like in your head. But it's like when you talk to yourself. But these people could talk back to me, but we weren't using our mouths. So, it's going to be hard to explain. But I'm looking forward to how you do it. So go right ahead. That lets you know that I did know I was talking to beings that, gold orb beings or whatever. We can talk at beings at different levels. So you actually went to what you call heaven or the other side. And that's fine that many of us do call it heaven and angels, or lack of better words, extraterrestrial, whatever. So you're talking, now, did you go up any more levels, or do you even know? I was able to figure out for some reason, but it took me years to get to that.
Yeah. See,
because I died later too. But let's go back to your story.
Right. Well, the thing is, on that particular near death, I would bet there were stars there, and then all of a sudden I was in the fog, and then I was walking around talking to people, and then the next thing I know, people are there in white outfits and telling me, I'm looking at them, and I said, I guess I'm dead, eh? And
okay.
And, they go, well, you're not there anymore, and what's really funny was the hospital had unhooked the IV was still in me, but they had unhooked a few other things off of me. So the IV was on, and I was in my room alone, but there was no way the hospital they could have known I died, but which I have to get the paperwork on, but that was the only thing hooked in me. There were no alarms hooked on me for any kind of dying and that kind of thing, to my knowledge. What was that? I mean, they didn't have the pulse hooked up, I guess you call it. But anyway, heart monitor, whatever. But what's interesting is there were some stars and then the fog and so forth, but they sent me to my left and introduced me to a couple people. One of them was a doctor that was in front of me, and they said, oh, he's going back. And I said, okay, well.
Sounds like a TV show, no offense.
It was.
It's like listening to me, but go ahead.
Well,
he's going back.
They
really said that in your head to you?
They told me he was going back, and they said, you're going back, and this other guy behind me was going back. And they said, so I knew he was a doctor because they were talking to him and like Dr. Da-da-da. And I didn't write it down like a dummy. And I should have, and because he would have recognized me because he kept turning around. And I remember he had silver whitish hair, and
wow.
But he was a medical doctor. And I thought, oh, okay, so one day maybe I'll meet him, So, when you talked about all those levels, we'll have to talk about that at another time because I'm not familiar with that, but I'm sure there's something applicable to that near-death situation. I think what's interesting is the third one, the one we were just talking about, was very informational. The last one, which happened, I think, 20 years ago, I was in the hospital on the operating table. I'm from the D.C. area, so I'm from Northern Virginia, but I'm from Charlottesville, so, both areas. But what was interesting is I was in D.C. at Sibley Hospital, and the tech was stealing the anesthesia. And how you get paralyzed?
That's some guy, nurse that was taking some drug and making everybody get hepatitis C. Oh, my God.
Right.
A med tech. I don't know if you followed that story. Oh, my God. They were stealing it? Anesthesia.
They were stealing
God.
it, and people were dying, and I died, but the ceiling did open on that one, and the angels came through, and this angel came through, and she was speaking a foreign language, and it sounded sort of Russianish, and at the same time, some fantastic music was coming through, and she was screaming upstairs like she was talking to God. She goes, I need some help, and down flies down these, I guess they look like angels, but they were very different looking. It's sort of scary at first, and then they transformed, and they looked like all blonde angels, and they were all in white, and they just flew down. I mean, like, you know, zippity doo dah quick, you know, just from left to right. It was like boom, automatically there. And I had the one that came first was on my right shoulder. Then I had like 8 finally, or 9 on the body, pushing me back into my body, because I remember raising above my body on the operating table, because I had a 20-pound tumor they were taking out, and I guess the tumor job was too hard to take, so a second doctor was called in, and I had tears coming down my face, and I remember the nurse saying, "Why does she have tears?" Because I was crying, because I could feel the pain of them cutting me open and taking out the freaking tumor.
Gosh.
And I sort of blew it off, because eventually I guess I got some more anesthesia, and they rolled me in my room and gave me some more painkillers. And the doctor came in, and he said to me, "Janette, you died on the operating table. Are you okay?" And I said, "Yeah, I'm fine." And he said, "Are you going to sue us, or what's going to happen here? Because I need to get lawyers." I said, "No, you saved my life. Why would I sue you?" And then, stupidly, 10 years later, I saw an article in the newspaper about how the anesthesiologist got caught, and that was the same exact time when I was in the hospital at Sibley Hospital. And I just thought, oh, my God, I guess I could have sued, because I actually died. And he had told me I flatlined. And, you know, it was just one of those things. It's a lot more complicated than I'm telling you. I think what was interesting to me was that the beautiful music came down. My psychic abilities became stronger. They grew in a more, I don't know the word I want to use, more of a sensitivity, higher sensitivity. And then, of course, it happened when I first got married. And then I guess 10 years later, I'm now known for the Kaylee Anthony case. And a lot of people don't know, I also did the Chandra Levy case and like 25 others. And I didn't go public on most of them because, you know, I had young girls and daughters, and I just didn't want to deal with too much publicity. So now I just get the publicity. It is what it is. And
interesting.
And now,
and I didn't know about any of that, except I mentioned something. I saw Kaylee Anthony on, I think it was LinkedIn. I think that's on. You know how you have friends, and I don't know if we were already friends or if we just happened to be friends, or you were suggested or I suggested, but I don't even know how we got together. But I'm excited because I saw the name Kaylee. It's Kaylee Anthony, isn't it?
It is. Mm-hmm.
And that was.
You should tell me your story. Yeah.
Well, I want to tell you mine, but I guess we can both do it here. I was very strangely. How can I say this? I was working on a case with Kentucky, and the state was we didn't have in Kentucky yet the private investigator's license. So I had one through Birmingham in Alabama, and I had worked in law enforcement criminal justice and as a investigator or paralegal in Houston. So I was trying to get this to follow from Texas to Houston to New York, and then back down to where I was in Kentucky. But I'd already driven a truck for 8 years. I had clearances in the government and then driving a big truck because I could go on bases that other people couldn't. So I thought it'd be relatively familiar, but Kentucky didn't have one, so I had to go back through the process. And so I met a gentleman there, and it was during that time, and then a gentleman that was doing UFO business, I guess they wouldn't ever tell me his name, but I know who he is now. But he was, I think he's retired now in Canada, but he was interested in me, had people approach me about my stories. So people were getting my stories from me, but I didn't have any publicity or websites or anything like that. I had, prior to in the government, J. Allen Hynek, which was in the UFO business, had gotten in touch with me and flown on a plane with me, and then he died. And I haven't talked to his secretary or a girl that had moved out, but we were supposed to all work together. So it's a really strange thing that things all came up with this back then in 80s, and I was embarrassed to talk about. But Kaylee came to see me, And I guess she had already passed over. So I'm putting all this together, but I haven't professionally put all the threads in my Woman in Black story yet, but it's coming. So you're a part of that, Jenny, because I want to know intelligently how we can speak to each other of individuals that are as real as any police officer, uniform I've worn, military, otherwise, are being spiritual and being a minister and believing in spirit afterwards too. But scientifically, it's really hard to talk about. So Kaylee coming to me was sort of hard because I had a granddaughter named Kaylee, and so I didn't know what the connection was. But my mother saw something on the news or something. I was walking in and out of her house, and Stanton Friedman was involved, and this guy from Kentucky. There was a whole bunch of things going on with police officers getting, law enforcement, investigators in Kentucky, and then getting on television shows, and I had ABC producers trying to get me for something, all this during that time, but I wasn't interested in any of that. So my mother just said, why don't you see what you can, see if you have anything, because she had dreams about jets falling and things, and her mother before her, they're all from Ireland, sort of red-haired ladies, and I guess they had the gift, but I had it when I was younger, and so I guess that's when the government recruited me in 1967, but this is after my daughter died and all that, which you know. But the little girl came to me like in a vision, not a dream, but a vision, and then she would, because I wouldn't do anything about it, she started coming in my dreams. So I finally figured, okay, this little girl's not going to let me rest. So I told Mother about it. She said, well, she saw this lady, and Mother was not a publicity hound. She wasn't at all. She was a very quiet soul, although she did write for newspaper and magazines in Houston at one time. But she was already retired. But she said, well, why don't you, that lady, we were in a little Beaver Dam Cafe, and she saw the lady and showed me Nancy Summit. But I wasn't up on all this. My mother was on Facebook, but I was very busy. So anyway, I said, okay, well, I'll just send her that this little girl's bothering me and that, I can see where she's buried. So I sent it to her, but I didn't follow the stories afterwards until way later on. Something came up about the girl that I saw something about the mother, and that I think her father said something about, I don't know if it was connived or something about a swimming pool, but what my guts were showing me was the vision she was showing me. So I told Mother that, well, she was dead, and she said, but how do you know that? I said, well, whatever this is about, you mentioned Kaylee, my granddaughter, your granddaughter, and that feeling you got in the film, and you said, well, I don't see. I said, so now I'm having dreams. I don't know if you put her in my head or she did, but now she's come to me. And I don't know if it's the empathic for my own, but that's what I related it to, was I had recently had a little granddaughter. She's about 13 or 14 now, but Kaylee and a granddaughter, so there was an empathic thread. So I told Mom, I said, well, she's dead and she's buried, and I can see it as a television show in my head, but I can't, I don't know what to do with it, Mom. I'm not a practicing real psychic right now. I mean, I don't know. So whatever it was, I emailed it, I think, at that time, because I was with AOL. Mother had got me on Facebook with AOL, so I sent it to, but nothing ever came of it. So I remember seeing her like on the news one night on a TV where she was talking to a glass to her mother and dad, so I have that memory. But then it seemed like one thing on the news was that she got off. And nobody in my world, because I wasn't into the psychic realm or I trained over 1,500 psychics back in Hawaii and, had a huge company over there, but I wasn't doing it like Psychic Network. The blonde that met me in California in 93 over our names, Psychic Network, she went on and added Oh, the clerk told her because I had Psychic Network, and this was before we had the internet and domain names. But she said, well, why can't y'all just get along? So we were fighting over it. But she said, but I've got Dan Warwick, blah, blah, blah. I said, I don't care. I'm doing an expo right here with Willie Nelson, so what? But she was like, okay, well, just y'all decide something. So the clerk said, just add the name Friends. And so can't y'all be friends? I said, fine. You do Psychic Friends. I've got Psychic Network, but I'm keeping it. So I've still got Psychic